In this video, we are going to talk about FQDN, fully qualified domain name. As I demonstrated in my previous videos, the only way that we could access DHIS2 instance was with the IP address. The instance was not accessible with some domain, but in practice, you would usually access your web application with the domain and with a certificate that is trusted with your browser. Right now, I can go to 172.prod/prod and you see that the browser is complaining that this connection is not private and that you could proceed if you trust the certificate, but the browser itself is not trusting that with the username, admin, and the password, and you're able to access the instance. But in a typical production environment, you usually have a domain or a subdomain which you can use to access your instance. In our case, I have a domain bought from Namecheap. Domain offers, basic DNS, or if you have your own custom DNS, then you can just put your own custom DNS servers here. So I'm using, for demonstration, Linode DNS server. So I'm hosting my domain here, but the DNS service is provided by the Linode. Going to the Linode domain control panel, you'll see that there are so much records that you can add, but today we're just adding an A record, IP version 4 address record, and we're just going to point to our server. So I'm going to put DHIS as my A record pointing to my server's IP address and save. So usually the DNS record takes some time to propagate the internet, and we can verify how far our DNS is propagated right now. DNS record. DNS record or DNS propagation checker, and our DNS or A record is DHIS.academy. Academy. Is it that? Let's check. Yeah, DHIS2, DHIS Academy. Okay. So right now it's propagated in a few places, as you can see in this map. But let's verify if it is responding in our server. So let me SSH the server. Tmax. Host DHIS.DHIS2.academy. And as you can see for sure that this server is able to resolve the subdomain to the server's IP address. LXC list quickly shows that we have instances running, and going to our inventory host, DHIS2 server tools deploy and editing our inventory host. You see that we indeed have 3 instances. They are not configured with the IP, fully qualified domain. They're just, it's empty. So right now, the only way that you can access these 3 instances is with the IP address and path. So the prod is accessible on the /prod, and def is on the def endpoint path, and the test is accessible on /test. See that prod is running 240 and test is running 241 and def is running 242. I'll quickly verify that. Prod, then we log in. Okay, and you can check that it's indeed running 240, and def, you can just append def there. See, and def is running, should be, yeah, 242 as it is here. The same goes for the test instance as well. So for us to be able to access these three instances with the domain, you would need to have a subdomain, first of all, from the, or rather the domain from the registrar, and the DNS record, at least for the subdomain. Okay. So going down and setting our subdomain, the one that we have already configured on Linode DNS cPanel, the A record, just set that here, DHIS.DHIS2.academy. Up. Another thing that I want to talk about is the TLS type. Right now, the default is Let's Encrypt. We are assuming that you don't have your TLS certificate and TLS key, private key, and that you're going to just get the default from Let's Encrypt. But in some deployment, or in some scenarios, you have your own TLS certificate and key, be the wildcard TLS certificate and its corresponding key. In that case, we just need to set TLS type to custom SSL. Okay. Something like that. It is documented even here. Custom SSL, you see that if you have your own custom TLS certificate, then this is how you should do. Going to the DHIS2 server tools GitHub repository, and also the official documentation. Let's check custom SSL. Yeah, it's also documented here how you can, use your own custom TLS certificate. So this should remain the default Let's Encrypt. And after that, you can just save the file and run the deployment with Ansible playbook, DHIS2, YAML, tag proxy -conf. So this is going to run the deployment and apply the new setting for the Nginx proxy. So going to the Nginx, this other side, let's say exec Nginx, sorry, proxy bash etc Nginx conf d, you'll see that the setting, the configuration that we have right now is the default. Cat default, you see that with the default configuration, we are able to access all the upstream, that is the prod, the test, and the def. But after a while, a few minutes, when the playbook runs and it completes, that would not be the case anymore, because we have another proxy configuration DHIS2.academy, and this file now is, having the server name DHIS.DHIS2.academy, and it's from this virtual host that we have access to all the upstream backend, which is the prod, test, and dev. Right now, if you try accessing the instance with a plain IP address, you will get a 404 message or empty response because the server is no longer accepting connection with the IP addresses because it's configured now to use the subdomain. Okay. So to access the prod, you would have to put the subdomain DHIS, DHIS2.academy, then /prod. The same goes for the test and the dev. Okay. But for the prod, you see in the inventory file that we have proxy rewrite equal true in each of the 3 instances, right? This is a parameter that ensures that when you install DHIS2.academy without appending anything, it's going to rewrite and append something. And in this case, it's appended prod. Let me explain why. Because you have proxy rewrite set to true for the test, for the dev, and for the prod, only the first one, in the list, only the first item in this list and the instances will be rewritten. It's going to apply only for the first instance. However, if you want to, for example, how the rewrite applied to the test, then you'd have to comment this rule here on the first item on the list and also for the last, or rather the third item on the list. So that means if you rerun the deployment, the rewrite is going to apply for the test and not the prod and not the dev. Okay, but the default behavior, as explained, is that the first item on the list usually is the one that the rewrite is going to apply to. In some situation, you have subdomain for each instance. In our case, going to the DNS cPanel, you see that we have only one record, but you can proceed and add even other records for the tab, for the dev, same server's IP address, and even for the test goes to the same IP address. So we have the 3 records: dev, the one that we had before, DHIS, and test. Checking if the propagation is being reflected in our server, dev.dhis2.academy and test. You see that at this moment, it is not. Usually it takes a few minutes or less than a minute to propagate. Let's try this. There's a typo there. Still not reflecting. It usually takes a few minutes, with the DNS record to propagate the internet. Let's try again. Dev is already responding. Test is the one that is still not responding. Or you can proceed meanwhile and edit inventory host file. So FQDN is right now set for all the instances. It's under all vars, all variables for all the instances. But if you want specific FQDN per instance, you just come here and set that FQDN for the prod. Let's just reuse the same DHIS2.academy. And for the test, we use FQDN test.DHIS2.academy there.DHIS2academy. Okay. So that means whatever the variable that you set per host along the host line is going to take precedence. Whatever the FQDN that you set along the host line is going to take precedence. Yeah. And now, since you have fully qualified domain name per host, different for each and every host, then the rewrite rule is going to apply for each and every fully qualified domain name, or subdomain independently. Okay, let's right quit. Let's verify that our host is resolving right now. And indeed, it is now resolving. So we can proceed and run the playbook. Ansible sudo Ansible playbook DHIS2.yaml. We are targeting proxy conf. And as you can see, we have the initial domain, that is DHIS.DHIS2.academy, serving all the upstreams, that is /prod, /test, and /dev. But after a few minutes, this is going to be serving only one backend, that is prod. And we're going to have additional configurations for the test and for the dev. We have now the test, list the files again. We have now the dev. So we have each and every configuration, and if we check the DHIS now, or we check the dev, for example, it is telling us that from this virtual host, we are only serving the dev backend. And from the DHIS.DHIS2 subdomain, we are only serving /prod backend, the way we have configured in our inventory hosts. Okay. Going back to the browser and testing, you now see that if you try accessing, say, dev from this DHIS subdomain, it's no longer going to be accessible. You get empty response. The same applies that if you try accessing prod from the dev subdomain, append prod explicitly, you're going to get an empty response, right? But on /root, it's going to do a rewrite for you to the dev specifically. The same goes for the test subdomain. If you just access test.dhis2academy, it's going to rewrite that request and append /test for you automatically. So the rewrite rules, as you've seen, these rewrite rules highlighted are functioning per domain basis. But when you had only single subdomain serving all the three instances, it was only applying for the first instance, which was prod during that time. Sometimes you don't want to be accessing your instances on /test or /prod or /dev because you have three subdomains for the three instances, and the three subdomains are different. They're not the same. So you just want to access your instances on /root. How do you do that? There is another variable called DHIS2 base path. And if you set that to root, path root, it is going to redeploy your Tomcat DHIS2 application in the Tomcat web server, so that it's no longer going to be accessible on /test prod or dev, but on the root, endpoint. When you have DHIS2 base path defined and set to root, then proxy rewrite parameter here is no longer gonna make sense. It's gonna be just, even if you have it set, it's not going to do anything, okay? Because root right now is serving the app. It's no longer gonna be doing a rewrite. Save your configuration and run the deployment. Right now, because the Tomcat is gonna be redeployed, you just need to run deploy.sh. And this is gonna run through all the play, including PostgreSQL. But if we want to target redeploying DHIS2 and configuring proxy, I'm gonna do sudo ansible playbook DHIS2.yaml. Please target proxy.conf. Also target create instance. Okay, so I'm targeting redeploying the instance. I'm targeting redeploying in the next configuration here. Enter. Okay. So right now, you see that configuration in Nginx here is dev.kipkurga.conf. The configuration here is set to load upstream from dev, but the dev, let's just verify that. Theme upstream, for example, dev.conf. See that the dev is being loaded on /dev, right? /dev loaded. But after a few minutes, when everything has changed and the access is no longer going to be on /dev and it will be on /root, this is going to change. All right. Let me just cut the contents before the configuration completes. So right now it's still on /dev, as you can see, location /dev. Yeah. Also, on the web, on the DHIS instances, within the web apps directory, the folder DHIS or the folder dev or the folder prod is going to be deleted and be replaced with the folder root, all in caps. And after that, we are going to be accessing all these three instances on the root endpoint. See that there are three changes here, which I think has made some changes in our upstream. Let's check again. You see now the upstream for the dev conf is now just having /. The same goes for the other two. Verify that. It's dev prod.conf and test.conf. See, all of them are now accessible on root. Okay, let's verify that. Just try accessing our apps from the browser. Test, we don't want to access it on test, but on root. Enter. As you can see, it is no longer accessible on /test. The same goes for the prod. See, on root, Okay, it wasn't prod, it was DHIS, sorry. DHIS.DHIS2 Academy is giving us access to the prod instance without appending anything. We've seen majorly three things: configuring fully qualified domain name, the rewrite, and accessing on /root.